I have another great game for you.
Boss Monster. And possibly Boss Monster Rise of the Minibosses. The first step of the game is to pick a boss monster, which is already amazing, and then the rest of the game is building a dungeon. There are a couple ways to pick bosses. The directions say just shuffle them and give one to each player randomly, but I say since there are 8 boss monsters, give each player 2, and then they can pick from those options. Then the setup starts with 5 room cards and 2 spell cards. These come from the deck. I've created a little discard pile in the middle for a couple options in case there are certain actions that let you snag a discard card. But otherwise, room deck, spell deck. Then the hero's going to come out in a moment, but the initial setup needs to happen. So you deal out your 5 cards, specifically 5 room cards, and 2 spells to each player. Usually you don't show them, so we have this pretend setup here where the other player has his cards invisible. There are a lot of quirky little rules, but you'll notice that this particular card has a slightly yellow symbol in the top left indicating it's an advanced room. You'll even see it says advanced. The reason that's important is because your first room has to be a plain room. When playing the game, you'll place your upcoming room face down next to your boss monster to the left because adventurers, heroes, are going to be entering your dungeon from the left and traveling through it, trying to reach your boss monster. Each player will pick their cards, and then once everybody's selected it, boom, you activate that room. Then there are certain rules. I'll skip those details for now, but there are certain things that bring different heroes to your dungeon. And so, hypothetically, I've forced this one. This doesn't actually follow the official rules, but I forced this one to come into my particular dungeon. Notice he has 8 hit points. That means he needs to be killed or injure my boss monster. This particular room is relatively simple. It just does 3 damage, but since he has 8 hit points, he'll have 5 left after he passes through that room. So once he gets to the end, he damages my boss monster. You see the little blood drop there indicating 1 wound. Now, without getting too complicated too fast, there are lots of small rules, but they all kind of make sense, and it just takes a moment to get used to the rhythm. I think this is what I call a small print game, because almost every room, every spell, almost everything has like little pieces of information at the bottom of the card that explains what it can do or what happens when something else happens. Little pieces of reading, but nothing crazy. It's a lot of fun. You can play 2 to 4 players. I think it's pretty smooth with 2 players. There are a lot of games where it's allowed to play 2, but it's kind of dull and boring. But this is fun. Really simple, really colorful. I honestly think it's too brief. I mean, some people like briefer games, so this is perfect for that. But I think it's a little too brief, and I'm trying to devise some house rules to make it last longer. The default is if you get 5 injuries, 5 little blood drops, you lose. But sometimes I've done it where if I'm playing with another player who's into the game, we just go until all of the heroes are down, because usually the game ends before you even get halfway through the stack of heroes, but I like to extend a little bit. Yeah, there's also, I also mentioned the slid in the other box, Rise of the Minibosses. You can play them separately. It is packaged to be an independent game, but you can mix the decks. Rise of the Minibosses adds a new mechanic, Minibosses. So instead of just building rooms next to your boss monster, you can attach mini-bosses to individual rooms to boost them in various ways. A couple other little mechanics in there, like you earn coins to do some upgrades, but a whole lot of fun, quirky illustrations. Again, I love the idea that you're the boss monster and you're trying to kill heroes coming into your dungeon. Lots of fun, simple themes. So again, it is Boss Monster or Boss Monster Rise of the Minibosses, but both great games in themselves, and of course you can combine them for a whole big mess. Yeah, and I hope you'll give it a try.